The harbor is empty. A Marine on the black sand of Guadalcanal watches the light come up over Iron Bottom Sound on the morning of August 9th, 1942. Yesterday, this water held the largest American amphibious force ever assembled. Transports riding low under full cargo, warships ranged in a protective screen, aircraft carriers somewhere over the horizon. This morning there is nothing. Flat grey water, the silhouette of Savo Island to the northwest. And behind the Marine, a jungle he hasn't cleared yet, on an island he doesn't have a map of. He doesn't know what happened in the dark. He doesn't know about the 4 cruisers lying on the bottom of the Sound, or the 1,000 sailors who went down with them. He just knows the Navy is gone. 11,000 Marines, 60 days of supplies, half of which never made it ashore. No naval support, no air cover. An enemy that had taken the waters around this island in 37 minutes. This is what they did next, and why it changed the war. 6 weeks earlier, Wellington, New Zealand, late July, 1942. Major General Alexander Archer Vandergrift is staring at a set of orders that arrived 2 weeks ago and trying to make them add up. He is 55 years old, lean, grey-haired. His men call him Sunny Jim, a nickname given years earlier by the legendary Smedley butler after Vandergrift came back smiling from an assignment to ride the cow-catcher of a locomotive and watch for mines on the track. He has served in Nicaragua, Haiti, and China. He knows how wars in the jungle actually work, as opposed to how they work on staff college maps. What the maps are showing him now is a problem that goes well beyond the jungle. The Japanese are constructing an airfield on Guadalcanal, a 90-mile island in the Solomon Chain south of Rabaul. Land-based aircraft from that field will menace the supply routes between the United States and Australia. The Allied response, Operation Watchtower, is to land the 1st Marine Division and take that airfield before it's finished. Vandergrift was told his men would have 90 days of supplies, time to train, proper intelligence. He has been told wrong on all counts. The 2nd echelon of his division only arrived on July 11th. The unionized stevedores in Wellington are still on strike. His 155mm howitzers and trucks cannot be fitted in the transport holds and are left on the dock. The landing rehearsals at Coral Island in the Fiji archipelago collapse when coral reefs prevent the boats from reaching the beach. Vandergrift describes them as a complete bust. The maps prepared from aerial photographs are misplaced by the Navy in Auckland and never arrive. The 90-day supply allowance is cut to 60. The men are carrying bolt-action Springfield M1903 rifles, a weapon from the previous war, with 10 days of ammunition. The Marines begin calling it Operation Shoestring. The assault force, 75 warships and transports, Vice Admiral Frank Fletcher's flag flying from the carrier USS Saratoga, departs Fiji on July 31st. Vandergrift has no more time. He sends his Marines anyway. The man who received an overall rating of not good on his very first Marine Corps evaluation in June of 1909, and who very nearly washed out of the corps he would one day command, is sailing for the gateway of the Pacific with improvised maps, half his artillery still on the dock in New Zealand, and the understanding that everything depends on speed. August 7th, 1942. The approach to Guadalcanal is hidden by weather. Cloud cover and squalls screen the invasion fleet through the night. The Marines hit the beach at dawn in reasonable order. What they find is almost nothing. The 600 Japanese engineers and 2,200 Korean laborers constructing the airfield disappear into the hills without a fight, leaving their equipment behind. Their rice is still on the stoves. By the afternoon of August 8th, the airstrip is in American hands. Vandergrift's men name it Henderson Field, after Major Lofton Henderson, a Marine aviator who led his dive bomber group into Japanese fighters at Midway and did not come back. The Marines celebrate in the tents their enemy left behind, eating captured Japanese rations. Some of them sleep. On the island of Tulagi, 12 miles to the north, it is a different story. 900 Japanese defenders fight to the last man, every one of them. The Marines at Tulagi receive their first encounter with an enemy who does not surrender, who does not consider it, who finds the concept foreign in some way that goes beyond orders. That knowledge settles into the men who survive Tulagi and does not leave. Nobody on the beaches of Guadalcanal knows that Vice Admiral Gunichi Mikawa sailed from Rabaul that morning with 7 cruisers and a destroyer. Mikawa is 52 years old, polished, experienced, a product of 3 decades of Imperial Navy doctrine that treats nighttime surface combat as Japan's great equalizer. His 8th Fleet has existed for 1 week. It has never operated as a unit. His battle plan is accordingly simple. 1 month before Mikawa sails, Allied signals intelligence had decoded a Japanese naval message describing the assembly of the 8th Fleet at Rabaul. But not until August 23rd, 2 weeks after the battle, the message described had already been fought. The warning that should have told the Allies a strike force was forming arrives too late to tell anyone anything. On the afternoon of August 8th, a Japanese reconnaissance aircraft finds the Allied fleet divided by Savo Island, the small volcanic cone sitting at the western entrance to the Sound. 18 transports, 6 cruisers, 19 destroyers, a battleship. Mikawa is outgunned more than 3-1. He signals his attack at 1840. Let us attack with certain victory in the traditional night attack of the Imperial Navy. The battle lasts 37 minutes. In a Sound gone moonless and black, Mikawa's cruisers pass Savo Island and open fire. The Allied ships are caught flat-footed. A misidentified patrol, a miscommunication between task forces, a watch that had been on duty for hours without contact and believed none was coming. In 37 minutes, USS Quincy, USS Vincennes, USS Astoria, and HMAS Canberra are destroyed. More than 1,000 American and Australian sailors go into the black water. Survivors spend hours in the dark among wreckage and the dead. It is the worst defeat in the history of the United States Navy. And then, the moment that determines everything that follows. Mikawa's cruisers have an open road to the harbor. The Allied transport fleet sits fully loaded, unguarded, unaware. Those ships are carrying everything the Marines on the beach will need for the next 4 months. Ammunition, food, medical supplies, the equipment never offloaded before the battle. Mikawa's decision here, in the next few minutes, determines whether there is a Guadalcanal campaign at all. He turns north for Rabaul. His reasoning: American carrier aircraft at dawn. He is right to fear them. He is wrong about where they are. Fletcher had pulled the 3 carriers back the previous evening. The transports are undefended. Mikawa doesn't know this. His caution is understandable. His caution saves the American campaign. By dawn on August 9th, the Navy has withdrawn from the Sound. The transports, having offloaded roughly half their cargo, follow. The Marines watch the last ships go over the horizon. They have 37 days of food at half rations, limited ammunition, no naval support, and no air cover on an island surrounded by Japanese naval power. Vandegrift issues a message to his men that morning. God favors the bold and strong of heart. He is 55 years old, with 33 years in the Corps. He has never needed to believe it more than right now. What follows is 6 weeks of grinding, improvised endurance before the first Japanese ground assault arrives. 6 weeks in which the campaign is quietly decided, not in a single battle, but in the daily accumulation of will against circumstance. Guadalcanal is a 90-mile island of triple canopy jungle and steep ridge lines, temperature between 85 and 100 degrees in air that holds near total humidity. The jungle floor is dark at midday. Centipedes, scorpions, rats. The Lunga River runs slow and brown through the marine perimeter, breeding malaria in every stagnant pool. At night, the jungle glows faintly. Bioluminescent fungi on the decaying trees, which the Marines call foxhole fire. The beaches are black volcanic sand. The smell is rot and standing water. The Marines eat 2 meals a day. Often those meals are captured Japanese rice and canned fish. They lose 20 to 30 pounds over the coming months. They hear Washing Machine Charlie, a single Japanese aircraft, its irregular engine giving it a distinctive drone, circling overhead in the dark, keeping men awake by its presence alone. On the nights Japanese battleships come, into the sound, what survivors describe as a freight train passing through the earth. 14-inch shells creating 10-foot craters in Henderson Field, overturning aircraft on the runway. The Marines fill those craters by hand in the tropical heat, hour after hour. The aircraft have to be able to take off again. On August 20th, the escort carrier USS Long Island delivers 19 Grumman F-4F Wildcat fighters and 12 Douglas SBD Dauntless dive bombers to Henderson Field. These are the nucleus of what the Marines call the Cactus Air Force, named for Guadalcanal's Allied code name. Marine, Navy, and Army Air Forces pilots flying in conditions that should not sustain air operations. Fuel so short aircraft are grounded for days, Brigadier General Roy Geiger running the whole operation from a command post that is itself occasionally under fire. The Cactus Air Force survives. That survival will prove decisive. Among the Marines working the Henderson Field perimeter line in these weeks is a gunnery sergeant from Raritan, New Jersey, named John Basilone. He is 26 years old, stocky, easygoing, with a reputation as one of the best machine gunners in the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. His friends call him Manila John, a name carried over from earlier Army service in the Philippines. He operates water-cooled Browning M1917A, 1 heavy machine guns. He is not known outside his battalion. He will be. By October, 8,000 of the 11,000 Marines on Guadalcanal have malaria. The anti-malarial drug Atabrine is available, but a rumor has circulated through the perimeter that the yellow pills cause sterility. The rumor is false. Men spit the pills out when the corpsman turns his back. Malaria, not Japanese bullets, will eventually disable 2/3 of the division. Wounds account for only 1/3 of casualties. These are the men who are about to fight 3 Japanese ground offensives in 2 months. The first wave arrives on the night of August 21st, but before it does, a Solomon Islander named Jacob Vusa reaches Marine lines. Vusa had been captured by the Japanese while scouting the approach routes east of the perimeter. They tied him to a tree and demanded the positions of the Marine lines. He told them nothing. They slashed his throat, drove bayonets through his chest and shoulder, and left him for dead. Vusa freed himself. He crawled through the jungle, bleeding, barely able to move, until he reached American lines and warned the Marines that a Japanese force was coming from the east minutes before the attack began. What comes is the first element of the Ichiki detachment, 917 soldiers, the Japanese High Command's opening response to the loss of Henderson Field. Their commander had been told the Americans on Guadalcanal numbered perhaps 2,000 poorly armed conscripts. He orders a frontal assault across a sandbar on the Tenarue River, directly into the Marine perimeter. What Ichiki's men walk into is interlocking machine gun fire and pre-zeroed fields of fire held by men who have been waiting since Vusa crawled in. At first light, armor envelops the remnants from the flank. The force is destroyed. Ichiki burns his regimental colors. He does not survive the day. The Marines look at the dead stacked on the sandbar and carry a question forward. If the Japanese send men this confidently, this contemptuously, what do they send when they finally start taking the Americans seriously? The answer comes in September, on a narrow coral ridge a mile south of Henderson Field. The ridge is called Lunga Ridge. After what happens here, it will be called Edson's Ridge, or Bloody Ridge. Both names will mean the same thing. Lieutenant Colonel Merritt Edson, Red Mike for the red hair and beard, commands the 1st Marine Raider Battalion. He is lean, cold, precise in speech, not given to displays of emotion. He places his 840 raiders and paratroopers on the ridge on the night of September 12th. The ridge is pitch dark under jungle canopy, soaked with rain, the air thick and still. 1 mile to the north, Henderson Field. Vandegrift had been slow to recognize the threat developing to his southern perimeter. Major General Kiyotake Kawaguchi's veteran brigade hits the ridge that night. It hits harder on the night of September 13th, waves of infantry surging up the narrow spine in the dark and the rain, Marines answering with machine guns and grenades, and, when the lines contract to the final knob of the ridge, with bayonets, flares go up and die. The lines shift and blur. In the mud, on a piece of coral and kunai grass that is the only thing standing between 2 Japanese regiments and the airfield, Edson stands on an ammunition crate and addresses what is left of his battalion. "We have to hold out just 1 more night." They hold it. Over 800 Japanese casualties, Henderson Field survives by the width of 1 Marine Lieutenant Colonel's resolve. Vandegrift will say, years after the war, that Kawaguchi's assault in September was the only moment during the entire campaign when he doubted the outcome. That if the ridge had fallen, we would have been in a pretty bad condition. Historian Richard Frank would assess that the Japanese never came closer to victory on the island itself than on those 2 nights in September, on that ridge above the jungle south of the airfield. The ridge holds. The campaign continues. October. Japanese strength on the island peaks at 36,000 troops. On the night of October 24th, 2 Japanese regiments move against Henderson Field. Between them and the runway stands 1 Marine battalion, the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Louis Puller. Chesty Puller is a compact, barrel-chested Virginian in his mid-40s with a jaw like a ship's prow. When soldiers of the Army's 164th Infantry Regiment arrive to reinforce his line and their commander attempts to sort out the chain of command, Puller ends the discussion. "I don't know who's senior to who right now, and I don't give a damn." The line holds because of many men. One of them is Barcelona. For 10 hours, through the night and into the first grey light of morning, Barcelona works his section of the line with 2 water-cooled Brownings. The Japanese come in waves. The dead pile up in front of the guns. So many that during lulls in the fighting, the bodies have to be cleared to keep the field of fire open. When the ammunition runs out, Barcelona crosses ground that is no longer safe to cross, twice, carrying loads that should require 2 men to bring back what the guns need. When a gun breaks down, he repairs it under fire. When the guns are down entirely, he fights with a pistol. At dawn, Sergeant Mitchell Page leads a bayonet charge that drives the last assault back. The Japanese suffer their worst single engagement loss of the entire land campaign. Henderson Field stands. In May of 1943, at a ceremony in Australia, John Barcelona receives the Medal of Honor for conspicuous gallantry during the engagement at Henderson Field. He found the celebrity unbearable. He requested a return to combat. The naval balance has been shifting. In October, Admiral Robert Gormley, the South Pacific Area commander whose paralysis had left the Marines to endure in isolation, is replaced by Admiral William Halsey. Halsey is blunt, profane, and aggressive. When news of the change of command reaches Guadalcanal, the reaction is immediate. Men who had been grimly enduring suddenly believe that someone above them intends to win. What follows in November is the most violent surface engagement in American naval history. On the nights of November 12th and 13th, 2 American task forces are sent into the Sound against superior Japanese forces. Their objective: prevent a battleship bombardment that would destroy Henderson Field. It is not a fair fight. Both task force commanders understand this before they enter the Sound. Rear Admiral Daniel Callahan and Rear Admiral Norman Scott lead their ships into the dark anyway. Both are killed. They are the only two American admirals to die in surface combat in the entire war, lost on consecutive nights in the same body of water, doing the same thing. The Japanese fail to deliver their reinforcement convoy. Thereafter, the Imperial Navy can land only subsistence supplies on Guadalcanal. No major reinforcements. No offensive material. The Tokyo Express, which had been delivering troops and weapons under cover of darkness, is now dropping sealed drums of rice in the surf. Vandegrift writes from his headquarters near Henderson Field, "Our greatest homage goes to Callahan, Scott, and their men who, with magnificent courage against seemingly hopeless odds, drove back the first hostile attack and paved the way for the success to follow. To them, the men of Cactus lift their battered helmets in deepest admiration. The Navy did not abandon this island. The Navy is dying for it." Both things are simultaneously true. The abandonment the Marines felt in those first empty weeks was real, and the price the Navy paid to correct it was real, and the two facts exist in the same story without canceling each other out. On the other side of the ridge, in the jungle the Marines have never penetrated, the Japanese soldiers call this island Shinoshima, Island of Death. By December, the soldiers of the Imperial Japanese Army on Guadalcanal are eating grass. They are dying at the rate of 50 men per day, not from battle, but from starvation and disease. Some units cannot lift their rifles. The High Command committed them here piecemeal, underestimated the Americans at every stage, and kept feeding men into a situation that had already consumed 2 full infantry divisions without changing the outcome. The Americans could absorb the losses. The Japanese cannot. On December 28th, Emperor Hirohito is personally briefed. On New Year's Eve, 1942, he formally grants permission to evacuate. Operation K is planned in secret. Approximately 11,000 surviving Japanese troops, the remnant of a force that once numbered 36,000, will move toward Cape Esperance and waiting destroyers. Not one American commander knows. General Patch's Army forces, who relieved the 1st Marine Division in December, watch Japanese movement toward the coast and interpret it as preparation for a counteroffensive. They hold back, cautiously massing for a blow that will never come. Across the jungle, men are dying, walking. They are not preparing an attack. They are running. On the nights of February 7th and 8th, the last Japanese destroyers complete their run. The final pocket of resistance collapses. Guadalcanal is clear. December 9th, 1942, 1400 hours. The 1st Marine Division is relieved by the American Division. The men who walk to the boats are yellow from a tabrain, hollow-eyed, trembling. They weigh 30 pounds less than they weighed on August 7th. Some have to be carried. They have held the island for 124 days, the accounting 650 Marines killed in action, 1,278 wounded, 8,580 with malaria, 31 missing, and then the number that reframes everything that came before it. Almost 3 times as many American sailors died in the waters around this island as Marines and Army soldiers died on it. The sound has a name for a reason. Iron Bottom is not a metaphor. It is an inventory. Vandegrift receives the Medal of Honor for his conduct between August 7th and December 9th. He is promoted to 4 stars in April 1945. He serves as the 18th Commandant of the Marine Corps. The man who received an overall rating of not good on his first evaluation in June of 1909 goes home from Guadalcanal as the most decorated Marine General of the war. The division ships to Melbourne for rest and refit. They hear an Australian folk song in the streets, in the bars, played by bands welcoming them back from the island. They adopt it. To this day, 1st Division Marines still ship out to Waltzing Matilda being played. The division's insignia, a blue diamond with the Southern Cross, sketched on the flight from Guadalcanal to Brisbane, approved by Vandergrift on the plane with a single initialed word, carries the name Guadalcanal in white across the numeral 1. And Basilone, the war bond tours that followed his Medal of Honor. He was good at them, charming and direct, the kind of man ordinary Americans recognized without effort. He found the celebrity unbearable. He requested a return to combat. The request was granted. On February 19, 1945, he landed on the beach at Iwo Jima on the first day of the landing. He was killed that day. He was 28 years old, 6 months on an island nobody had mapped, with supplies for 60 days and a navy that the battle drove away. 3 waves of Japanese infantry that should have broken the perimeter. 2 admirals who sailed into the dark, knowing they would not come out. 11,000 men who arrived whole and left hollow, who held a coral airstrip in 100-degree heat until the weight of everything they'd absorbed became the thing that finally broke the other side. The Corps folded what happened here into its identity, the psychological truth of that empty harbor on the morning of August 9th, and the cost of everything that followed. Both carried forward together. They've been carrying them ever since.